The conference room aboard the Zhakari flagship Aerial Dominion hummed with the sophisticated machinery of a civilization that had conquered 47 worlds. Fleet Commander Zha'thik examined the holographic display with what his species expressed as amusement, a subtle coloration shift across his sensory ridge. These humans, he vocalized to his assembled officers, defend their territories with what they call bullets, solid projectiles, propelled by controlled explosions. He paused, allowing the absurdity to settle. Our intelligence indicates they still rely on chemical combustion for warfare. How charmingly primitive. His tactical officer, Vrenkor, cycled through the intercepted human military data. Commander, they've designated their planet as Sol-3, but they call it Earth. Remarkably, they've divided themselves into nearly 200 separate political entities. They war amongst themselves constantly. And yet, Zha'thik gestured at the display when our probe entered their system. They somehow achieved unanimous agreement within 3 planetary rotations. Curious, he dismissed the thought. Nevertheless, a species that murders its own with metal pellets will pose no challenge to directed energy weapons. Prepare the fleet for occupation operations. Their fusion technology and biological diversity will make excellent additions to the collective. 3 cycles later, the Zhakari Armada materialized at the edge of the solar system. 300 vessels, each mounting graviton disruptors and plasma cascade weapons that could glass a continent. They expected surrender broadcasts. They received something else entirely. Unknown vessels, this is United Earth Space Command. You are in violation of our territorial sovereignty. Reverse course immediately or you will be fired upon. The transmission came in 17 different languages simultaneously. Zha'thik felt his thermal regulation system activate, producing what humans would recognize as laughter. Fired upon. Tactical, begin the advance. Let us teach these primitives the cost of. The sensor station erupted with alerts. Commander. Multiple launch detection, projectile weapons, but the velocities are impossible for chemical propulsion. They're using electromagnetic acceleration, thousands of projectiles, shields to maximum. Those crude, Zha'thik never finished the sentence. The first wave of human railgun rounds struck the Zhakari formation at a fraction of light speed. Tungsten carbide penetrators, each weighing several tons, moving with kinetic energy that made atomic weapons look gentle. They weren't explosive. They didn't need to be. The first destroyer simply ceased to exist around passing through its entire length, the shockwave pulverizing everything inside. Evasive patterns? Return fire. Zha'thik's command came too late for 6 more ships, but the humans weren't finished. From the moon, from orbital platforms, from the planet itself, missiles launched. Not the elegant, single-purpose weapons the Zhakari used. These were multi-stage monstrosities, each one adapting mid-flight, splitting into submunitions, deploying chaff and electronic countermeasures, carrying warheads that ranged from conventional explosives to weapons the Zhakari didn't even recognize. Vrenkor stared at his displays in disbelief. Commander, they're using nuclear weapons, fission fusion devices. They're detonating them in their own orbital space. Madness, Zha'thik whispered. But effective madness. The electromagnetic pulses from the nuclear detonations scrambled Zhakari targeting systems. The radiation would linger for years, making the space around Earth hazardous. They're poisoning their own territory. What species does this? The answer came with brutal clarity, as human fighters swarmed from Earth's atmosphere. They shouldn't have been space-capable, but there they were, a small craft, bristling with weapons, moving in coordinated attack patterns that spoke of millennia of aerial combat evolution. The pilots transmitted on open channels, and the auto-translators caught fragments. Fox 2. Splash 1. Break left, break left. Combat chatter in a dozen Earth languages, but the tone was universal. These weren't soldiers following orders. These were hunters enjoying the kill. The first boarding action came 30 minutes into the battle. The Zhakari cruiser Righteous Path had its shields compromised by a human nuclear missile weapon. The Zhakari had studied historically but never imagined encountering in modern warfare. The humans didn't use boarding craft. They used repurposed ore haulers, crashing them into the hull breaches at terminal velocity. Soldiers in powered armor pouring out before the ship even stopped moving. Fleet Commander Zha'thik received the last transmission from Righteous Path's captain. They're inside. They're using projectile weapons in our corridors. The rounds, they bounce off the walls, they fragment, the transmission ended with sounds the translators wouldn't process. All ships, maximum acceleration, retreat vector, Commander. Vrenkor's voice hit frequencies that indicated pure panic. They've deployed satellites between us and our escape route. Orbital weapons platforms, thousands of them. The platforms were laughably simple. Chemical rockets had placed them in position over the past 3 days, while the humans had broadcast peace negotiations and diplomatic overtures. Each platform contained a single weapon, a metal rod, magnetically accelerated to orbital insertion velocity. The humans called them rods from God. The Zhakari learned to call them death. The rods fell like judgment. No explosives, no energy signatures to track, just mass and velocity converted into devastation. 3 more Zhakari ships vanished from the battle display. But the humans still weren't done. Because now came the carriers. The USS Indomitable and her sister ships had been holding back, waiting. They weren't warships by Zhakari standards. They were weapons platforms, stripped-down hulks, carrying one-thing missiles, thousands upon thousands of missiles, each one dumb by galactic standards, lacking AI, lacking adaptive shields, lacking anything except a guidance system, a propulsion system, and a warhead that married human creativity with human brutality. Cluster munitions that filled space with shrapnel. Missiles that created directed electromagnetic pulses. Warheads containing nanothermite that burned through Zhakari hulls like paper. And behind them all, the humans themselves, transmitting on every frequency. You wanted to see primitive. Let us show you what desperate evolution creates. Welcome to Earth, Commander. Welcome to the deathworld. The ground assault on Mars colony told the same story. The Zhakari had landed 10,000 soldiers, powered armor, energy weapons, centuries of military doctrine. They encountered 800 human marines. The battle lasted 6 hours. The Zhakari lost 8,000 soldiers before retreating. The humans used everything. Landmines buried explosives triggered by pressure, a weapon so simple it predated spaceflight. Snipers with chemical-propelled rifles that killed from 2 kilometers away, beyond the range of Zhakari sensors. Explosives packed into vehicles that drove themselves into Zhakari formation. And when ammunition ran low, they used the environment itself, collapsing tunnels, venting atmospheres, turning the colony's own life support systems into weapons. One Marine, identified and intercepted communications as Gunnery Sergeant Sarah Chen, transmitted a message that would be studied in military academies across the galaxy. You came to our neighborhood. You threatened our families. You thought we'd roll over because your weapons are fancier. We've been killing each other with rocks and sharp sticks for 300,000 years. We got really good at it. Aboard Eternal Dominion, Fleet Commander Zha'thik watched his armada die. Of 300 ships, 70 remained combat capable. The humans had lost platforms, satellites, and fighters, but their planet remained untouched. Their fleets were still launching. And now, intelligence reported, the humans were deploying what they called their reserve forces. Reserve forces? This wasn't their full military. Sir Vrenkor's voice had lost all its earlier confidence. We're receiving a transmission for an Earth Space Command. On screen, the human who appeared wore a simple uniform, no ceremonial armor, no enhancement. Admiral Marcus Webb, his nameplate read. His expression was mild, almost friendly. Commander Zha'thik, I believe we've demonstrated sufficient capability. You have 2 options. You can surrender your remaining vessels and crews, who will be repatriated once our diplomatic channels are established. Or you can continue this engagement, and we'll demonstrate weapons. We have been reluctant to deploy near our civilian population centers. Zha'thik's translator struggled with the next phrase. We've been fighting at peacetime rules of engagement, Commander. We'd prefer not to escalate to total war, because when humans do that, we have a saying, Scorched Earth. We'll burn everything rather than let an enemy take it, including, if necessary, you, us, and this entire region of space. The transmission ended. Zha'thik looked at his tactical display, at the human weapons platforms that had somehow maneuvered behind his fleet, at the missile signatures that indicated enough firepower to destroy what remained of his armada 10 times over. He thought about the combat footage from Mars, about Zhakari soldiers fleeing from humans in what could only be described as primitive body armor, wielding chemical weapons and explosives. Signal the fleet, he said quietly. We surrender. The Battle of Sol lasted 8 hours. The Zhakari Collective's expansion halted for the first time in 3 centuries. The humans demanded nothing except recognition of their sovereignty and the establishment of embassy exchanges. Within a year, 17 species had applied to purchase human weapons technology. Within 5 years, human advisors were training 32 planetary militaries. Within a decade, humanity had a seat on the Galactic Council. But the real change happened in every military academy in known space. The first rule, taught before students even learned to operate weapons before they studied tactics or strategy: never underestimate an enemy from a death world. Never assume primitive means ineffective. And never, ever start a war with a species that spent its entire evolution perfecting the art of killing. In the archives of the Galactic Military Museum, preserved in perfect stasis, sits a single human rifle. Chemical propulsion, metal projectiles, technology barely advanced from Earth's 20th century. Underneath, a placard in 12 languages. They brought this to a space war. They won. Commander Zha'thik lived another 40 years, retiring with honor despite the defeat. He spent his retirement writing a military memoir. The last line read, "We came to conquer primitives. We discovered that humans aren't primitive. They're just patient. And they've been perfecting warfare since before our species discovered fire. That's not a primitive species. That's an apex predator that learned to fly." Humanity never forgot the lesson either. But their lesson was different. Peace is preferable. Diplomacy is ideal, but if you must fight, fight to win. And never let them forget what happened the last time someone thought we'd go quietly. The stars, as it turned out, had room for one more apex predator. Earth had just introduced itself.